S'il vous plaît, je vous demandais simplement une petite minute d'attention. On a la chance d'avoir avec nous un brasseur qui, un, vient de loin, et deux, fait des choses assez exceptionnelles. Ah qu'est-ce qu'il veut Bernardo là? Et donc voilà, Leonardo est là avec nous ce soir. Donc déjà je le remercie sincèrement d'être avec nous ce soir et on va pouvoir le remercier une fois qu'il aura parlé comme il faut. Là on va lui demander de dire un mot sur sa brasserie et il y a certaines bières qui sont très particulières comme vous pouvez le constater ce soir et il va nous dire un mot ou deux là-dessus. Je vous avoue qu'il parle un peu français, mais il est un peu timide avec son français. Par contre, il parle très bien anglais. Et voilà, on va faire ça comme en français. Voilà, on va le laisser parler comme il le sent et on l'écoute.
Bonsoir et bonne année.
Merci.
Je ne parle bien français, je ne parle pas. C'est un petit peu un problème de parler de bière en français, c'est impossible. So I prefer to speak in English, so you can understand. Eventually, you can translate to everyone. So I think it will be better. Anyway, so thanks everything, and thanks first of all to the guys from La Mousse that organized this event. It's pretty exciting for me to see our beer here in Paris, and we tried for many years to stay in Paris, and because I think it's one of the most important cities in the world for all the gastronomical culture, and it's really, really exciting that now the beer culture is starting in a very good way, and I think Fimous it's one of the best beer bar in Europe, so it's pretty exciting. So thanks for organizing this. We opened the brewery in 2005. We are not so far from Rome, and the brewery is in Borgo. Borgo is just a very, very small village, tiny village. It's located between the two seas in Italy, so it's just in a mountain area. And we opened that in 2005. From the beginning, our idea was just to brew special beers and things that was not so common and not so present in the market, and at the beginning of our production was much more inspired by the new wave of American beers and also the traditional British styles. After a couple of years, we decided to go and to brew things different. I mean, we tried to make some experimentation on yeast. We started to make some experimentation on the use of local ingredients and local yeast and local things, and to go and to brew like an Italian beer, because it's pretty impossible to talk about beer in Italy, because Italy is pretty famous for, it's another country that have a very, very famous and very important gastronomical culture, but it's much more focused on the wine, on the cheeses and things, but not so much in beer. And try to make an Italian beer, it's difficult, because if you use ingredients from Italy, it's not the only thing that we can get Italian beer. I think we have to brew in a different way. We have to try to make a beer that there's a lot of connection with I don't know, other typical Italian words like wine or like cheese or like things. So what we tried is that. And now we have a very, very huge production, not in numbers, but in numbers of different variety of beers, because we brew, I mean, I don't know, I don't remember, it's 35, 40, I don't know. Every time we start brewing something new, so that's pretty difficult to stay behind what we do. And but the sense what we love to do is just to make a lot of experimentation. So for example, we use a lot of wood for fermentation, not only for aging. We use terracotta amphoras for fermentation as well, and we use a lot of wild yeast. That, for example, Maledetta, I think it's one of the most interesting beer in this moment in our brewery, because the recipe, the original recipe, it's an IPA, but at the same time it's fermented by some local yeast. But because we made a very, very crazy experiment, was just to take some small jars, glass jars, and with the unfermented wort, and we left in the air for a couple of days, and then we brought to the lab, and some of the jars were full of mold, so we just threw it away, and other of these jars started a small fermentation, and we make an isolation of the yeast inside, and we were able to find 10 different varieties of yeast, and from these 10 different, we started to make small batches of fermentation. From them, we just found that 2 yeasts were able to make fermentation, and these 2 yeasts are used inside Maledetta. And this is pretty nice because every time we work, we talk about beer, we talk about ingredients, but we always talk about the variety of hop, variety of malt, but we never focus on the real brewer. We are not the brewers are the yeast. And the characterization of the yeast gives a special character to the beer. And so I think it's really, really important because you can see that Maledetta it's an IPA, so you should get the smell of the hop, the character of the grapefruit and resinous aromas that come from the hop. But at the same time, you have a lot of complexity it's much more important coming from the yeast, from the fermentation. So you lose all the hop character, at the same time you have a lot of complexity. And I think it's really interesting because it's something that is also not easy to do because the yeast that we use, there are yeast from the area and yeast that are different from the others. And this is also, for example, what happened with spontaneous fermentation, because if you just see what spontaneous fermentation, you leave the wort unfermented, and all the yeast present in the area, they just start and make a fermentation. So it's something that is unique in the beer. And so this is really, really interesting. And then we have a lot of things. I mean, we have a lot of beers, but I cannot talk about all the beers because we can stay all night long and drink beer and not hear me. So that's. But just 2 words to another beer that I think it's really interesting. This is L'Equilibrista. L'Equilibrista. This is just only in bottle, not on draft. This is this bottle, and L'Equilibrista is made by 50% of. Duchessa it's our saison with spelt, with avec le pot, and 50% it's Sangiovese must. Sangiovese must is typical grape from central part of Italy, and we blend the Sangiovese must and Duchessa wort before the fermentation starts. So the fermentation is made by the yeast present in the Sangiovese must, and at the same time in the yeast that we have for making Duchessa. After 3 months, we bottle and we make a method for making champagne. So, the champenois method. So, we just add a lot of sugar for the priming, and after 1 year, we started making remoage, and then we make the gorgement. So, it's like a sort of champagne. But it's nice because using the wine, you just have a combination between the 2 words. So l'equilibrista means, I don't know, you can translate in France. Equilibrista. It's easy because sometimes in French you have, as you say, you try to explain English with a lot of words, and you say it's the same word, so that's easy. Okay. And so sorry again for not speaking French, but. And so this is nice because it's just in the balance between the 2 words, the wine word and the beer word, and at the same time you have a lot of sourness, but it's not the sourness, for example, like spontaneous fermentation, so it's a little bit of very, very strong sourness, but this time is a gentle sourness is coming from the wine. And it's pretty interesting because also the bubbles has really, really a perlage that it's very similar to the sparkling wine, so the champagne, to spumante. It's something really, really interesting. And then we have all the others, so I hope you enjoy it. The next one I'm not around.